Spirited Away is a wonderful movie with a bizarre office culture. Imagine if this was your first boss. That's not workplace bonding, that's nightmare fuel. But the strangeness of Spirited Away is one of the best features of the movie. The office culture of Spirited Away is driven by gluttony, greed, and family, with a heavy emphasis on dual identities as well. Once you understand that, you'll come to understand the movie as a whole a lot better. At least I hope so. Let's check it out. A major motif that runs all throughout Spirited Away is the idea of dual identities. People have multiple faces that they show the world, and most characters in the movie have some scene where they either transform into something else physically, or where they show a different personality, or both. This concept of dual identities is so important to the film that they put it right in the title. The Japanese title for the film is Sen Tochihiro no Kamikakushi, or The Spiriting Away of Sen and Chihiro, which treats both of Chihiro's personas as two separate people. There's also a bit of wordplay hidden in that title. Most of Spirited Away is set in a bathhouse, and guess what the modern name is for a public bathhouse in Japanese? It's sento. Of course, it's spelled differently and it's one word instead of two, but Miyazaki put the sounds that mean bathhouse at the very beginning of the title. Once Chihiro signs her contract to work for Yubaba, she gives Yubaba her name, and Yubaba calls her Sen from that point forward. It's like having a work identity and an outside of work identity. Sen's new name is not an accident. Apparently a lot of girls named Chihiro use Sen as a nickname because it's the first character in the kanji spelling for that name. There's that great shot where Yubaba is literally ripping away the rest of Sen's name from the contract. Her full name is Ogino Chihiro, but the only character that's left is read as Sen. It's got a few potential meanings, but my favorite one is 1,000, since Yubaba is literally reducing Chihiro to a number now that she's working for her and has joined the office culture. By the way, I chose this video to celebrate 1,000 subscribers to the channel, so thanks to everybody. And whether you've been around from the beginning or if this is your first video, I really appreciate it. Part of the office culture in Spirited Away appears to be that change is a constant. Anyone can change their identities, and you never quite know who is who or what is what. Chihiro becomes Sen, the baby turns into a mouse, the Yubaba crow thing, or as I like to call it, Crowbaba, turns into a crowlet, the paper doll turns into Zeniba, the three heads turn into a baby, the stink spirit is actually a river spirit, and Haku is a dragon who's also a river. Haku is kind to Chihiro early on, but he's cold and indifferent to the newly minted Sen once he's inside the bathhouse. There seems to be a rule in the office culture of Spirited Away where you have to act cold and aloof towards the human, especially if you're around other yokai. You can only be kind if it's limited situations where it's just you and the human. For example, Lin acts put out at first when Sen is assigned to work with her, but she quickly changes into Sen's work bestie once the two of them are alone. Having the yokai act cold in one situation and kind in another is another way that the movie uses that theme of dual identities. There's a great shot on the train ride where you see Sen and her reflection in profile, and it looks like two distinct girls. This reminds me of that split in the movie between Sen and Chihiro. Have you ever wondered what the signs mean as Chihiro approaches the bathhouse? At 10:50 you can see a couple of symbols on the flag and the chimney pipe. The kanji on the pipe means bathhouse, which makes sense, but that 4-square kanji on the flag is abura, which means oil. This is the same symbol on the statue out front and on the sign above the bathhouse entryway. The two kanji on that sign are the name of the bathhouse, though it's never spoken in the film, Aburaya, which literally means oil shop. But this doesn't mean they're selling crude oil. Instead, the oil in the bathhouse's name refers to the aromatic oils that are added to the baths. Those oils are a big reason why customers show up to Aburaya instead of just taking a bath at home, so that's why it's the business's name. I didn't think much of the hiragana character on the bottom of the sign when I found out it's the symbol for a public bathhouse, literally meaning hot water. But then I learned that this character is pronounced yu, and that often these bathhouses would be run by an old woman, or baba in Japanese. The job title that these bathhouse operators were known by was yubaba, which you can translate as the old witch of the bathhouse. After Chihiro's dad makes the fateful turnoff to try to take a shortcut, there are brief indications that the family has already entered the world of the spirits. The first is the torii gate in front of the tree, a traditional portal into the spirit world, and then the little cube shrine scattered on the ground. And finally, the Dosujin statue at the top of the hill, pointing the way into the tunnel. This type of statue is often used to mark entrances or borders, according to the Ghibli wiki. And the design of this statue is of a woman with two faces, which fits in nicely with the repeated theme of dual identity that we see throughout the film. There's also a nice bit of foreshadowing with the frog statue at the top of the stairs. Up to that point, the statues have been Dosujin, but it seems now the family is making that further transition into the yokai world where a lot of the staff at the inn will be frogs. Of course, the full transition into the spirit world starts when Chihiro's parents literally pig out on a pile of food that they find in the abandoned theme park. but I would never just start eating unknown food if I came across it, so it seems really weird to me. The bathhouse has 3 main areas: the boiler room down below, the middle area with the customer floor and the workers' quarters right above that, and then the top has that posh administrative area where Yubaba lives. Each of those major areas, underworld, middle section, and corporate office, has a very different look and feel to it. The boiler room is full of riveted plates of iron with lots of steam, gadgets, gauges, and levers. Kamaji's room also resembles an office bank of file cabinets with all kinds of dried herbs and who knows what else hidden away in each drawer. It's great that the first task that Chihiro gets is to put the lump of coal into the fire, and she has no clue what to do. But when she asks for help, all the soot gremlins just kind of back away like, not my problem, and do nothing to help her. I've had a few workplaces where that was the exact response if somebody needed help, and not exactly the most rewarding places to work. But I do love that the little soot balls are completely selfish here, and they're just looking out for number one. You might remember those soot gremlins from My Neighbor Totoro, and it's pretty cool seeing them here too. One of the more heartwarming parts of the office culture in Spirited Away is that often initial coldness will turn to kindness, and the formerly selfish-seeming soot gremlins show their kind hearts when they return Sen's shoes to her later on. I couldn't stay mad at those little guys, they're adorable. The customer baths and the living quarters resemble the much more traditional look of a Japanese inn. There's a lot more wood flooring and wooden posts here than down below, but the elevators might preserve just a touch of the steampunk remnants from the boiler room. On the customer floor, Sen meets one of the most purely positive characters in the whole film. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still weird, but the Radish Spirit is one of the few characters who never acts coldly towards her. I know that the Radish Spirit is a customer, but to me he feels like the old-timer at work when you're starting a new job. And they don't say much or make a big deal about you, but they'll calmly give you a bit of direction to help you get used to your new job, and then continue on their way like nothing happened. Those guys are the best. If you look closely as the yokai get off the ferry in one of the earlier scenes, then you can catch a glimpse of the Radish Spirit before he meets Sen. The Radish Spirit is the only guy who seems to be chill with Sen working at the bathhouse. Everybody else either gets in her way, actively roots against her, or has to put on an act before they can be kind to her. Sen has to bicker for tokens with the foreman, for example, even though she's just trying to do her job. No Face helps her out and tries to dump even more tokens on her, but this feels like the pile of gold that he offers to her later. He's just trying to buy her affection. Sen rejects both the tokens and the gold from No Face, showing that she can't be bought off by greed, and that family means more to her than material gain. The upper floors are completely devoid of any of the stylistic touches of the previous floors, and instead are an opulent collection of gold and finery. Did you ever go to somebody's house, or maybe you grew up in a house, where there's a sitting room with all this uncomfortable looking furniture, and it's always kept clean, and kids are never allowed inside, and it's just meant to receive important guests, which meant, not you. Well, that's what Yubaba's floor reminds me of. I think Yubaba has one of the best character designs in all of anime. She's absolutely terrifying, and I'm sure that effect is at least tripled for a little kid, or for a grown man. Just kidding. It's not like I carry around a kitchen knife with me when I'm alone in the house in case Yubaba shows up. Oh, this? No, this is to keep away those CGI kids from the Polar Express. It's not for Yubaba. Most job interviews go pretty much like this one, by the way. You beg for work, they call you a bunch of names and question your skills and work ethic, and then out of desperation you sign a contract that steals your identity. If you've ever worked in an office setting or most other workplaces, you know that one of the few moments of sanity that you get is during your lunch break. Besides greed, one of the biggest motivators in the office culture of Spirited Away is food. I guess you could say there are 2 main forms of greed in the movie: greed for food and greed for gold. Food is such an important part of this other world that if you don't eat any, you'll just disappear. When Chihiro eats the food of the spirit world to avoid disappearing, she does so after being invited to eat the food, and then eats only a small amount, very different from her parents who ate loads of food without even asking. This pattern repeats itself. Chihiro gets offered different food or edible substances along the way, but she's usually a reluctant eater who only eats simple fare like rice balls. She never shows any tendencies towards gluttony, similar to how she never shows any greed for gold. In Spirited Away, people show their greed by their desire for gold and what they eat. When Haku eats Aniba's magic golden seal, he combines both of these forms of greed by actually eating the gold. Symbolically, this might be one of the reasons why the curse is so powerful that it almost kills him. If Haku eating the golden seal symbolizes both greed and gluttony, then it's significant that Sen's love is able to cure both. In the world of corporate greed, money is seen as the solution to all problems, and it's also an excuse for doing anything that might be morally wrong, such as gobbling down somebody else's mystery food. Greed is one of the biggest motivating factors for everyone who takes part in the office culture at Aburaya. I think it's telling that the first thing that Yubaba does when she feels a presence coming her way is to scoop up her jewels and money and hide them in a box. Gold is just about the only thing on her mind, other than the baby. That presence that she feels is the stink spirit, and the spirit's cleansing is a wonderful scene that's one of my favorite in the entire film. I can almost feel the suds in the water washing over me too whenever I watch it. One of the more unexpected things that happens during the washing of the stink spirit is that Yubaba shows that she can actually be a hard worker and a pretty effective leader, although a lot of that respect is probably just fear that she'll turn her employees into pigs. She also shows a more generous side by ordering that all the sake will be on the house that night, though she does make sure to tell everyone to give the gold nuggets back. And what's with the snitch telling everyone that the gold is company property? Come on, man. It does seem fitting as a part of Japanese business culture that once the whole staff joins together to serve the wishes of their customer, the direct result is actual gold. Of course, this gold also becomes bait for greedy workers who get gobbled up by a monster. I wonder if Miyazaki is saying something about the dangers of being single-minded in the pursuit of gold. If we break down the office culture into the twin motivations of greed for food and greed for gold, then No Face presents an interesting problem of where to put him. Most of the others just follow their own greed by wolfing down a bunch of food like Sen's parents or lusting after gold. Sen is one of the few who can abstain from both greed and gluttony, but No Face kind of does both. He shows a ravenous appetite and eats everything in sight, including yokai, but he's also able to produce gold at will and doesn't care a single bit for it. For him, that gold is a way to lure other people who he can eat, or to buy his way into family by trying to please Sen. Once he is purged of his greed later in the show, then Sen is able to give him that family connection that he wanted in the first place. I never realized it before, but when No Face gulps down all the food that the yokai can bring him, he's mimicking exactly what Chihiro's parents do at the beginning of the movie. Somehow he doesn't turn into a pig though. Maybe it's because he's a customer and they're willingly giving him the food instead of stealing it like Sen's parents. That gift from the river spirit that Sen got seems to be an antidote for greed. It heals Haku, who had coveted the witch's magical secrets, and it causes No Face to regurgitate the effects of his gluttony when Sen feeds him the last of the gift. It also would have probably worked if she had given it to her parents, which was her original plan, because they were in the state that they were in because of their own greed. Sen says that being in the bathhouse makes No Face crazy, and that's probably because of the spirit of greed that pervades that place. There's a part early in the film where Kamaji calls Chihiro his granddaughter. It's a bit of a weird moment, because you can see that no one buys it, but this is the third motivator in the office culture of Spirited Away, besides food and gold. A lot of the yokai are looking for family, and since many of them don't exactly know how a family works, they try to get one through artificial means. Kamaji declares that Chihiro is his granddaughter, though he's probably just covering for her. No Face tries to buy Sen's affection with gold, and Yubaba conjures up herself a baby with magic. At least, I hope that's how the baby got there. I'm not going to think about that too much. There's a scene later that combines family with greed as the transformed baby gorges itself on chocolates, and Yubaba complains about No Face because he damaged the bathhouse and he should have had more gold. When Haku confronts Yubaba and snaps her out of her grumbling over money, she realizes that her family has been completely wiped away. Yubaba erases the spell and turns the transformed baby back into three heads, and then she goes crazy and starts breathing fire, as one does. While this is perhaps the most terrifying scene with Yubaba, at least her anger is motivated by worrying over her family. Everything she supposedly held dear has shown itself to be an illusion at that point. The gold is turned into dirt, and the baby is turned back into three heads. Chihiro, of course, gets her family back at the end of the movie, and she becomes a much happier person who can sacrifice on behalf of others. Near the end of the movie, we get one of the more striking uses of dual identity. We meet Yubaba's twin, Saniba, who seems like just another antagonist at first, but who ultimately proves to be the mirrored opposite of her sister. Instead of running a corporate hierarchy motivated by greed, Saniba shows us an example of the anti-office culture. It's interesting that Saniba wants Sen to call her granny, because we've already seen other yokai trying to establish a family any way they can. Just as Sen is searching for her own family throughout the movie, it seems that a lot of the yokai are searching for a family of their own as well. Saniba, No Face, and Mouse and Crow weave a hair tie for Sen, and it's one of the few selfless gestures in the film. No Face has tried to offer Sen gifts before, but they were gifts meant to appeal to her greed. The hair tie is a more genuine symbol of friendship, and is one that ties No Face to a larger family, since many people worked on it. At the end of the film, Sen returns to the human world, and her mom calls her Chihiro, giving her her full identity back. There's another shot of Chihiro in profile at 2 hours and 25 seconds that matches the double profile on the train. But this time there's no reflection, because Chihiro has reunited both phases of her identity. The film ends with almost everyone having been purged of that culture of gluttony and greed, and they are reunited once again as a family. Making this video helped me appreciate Spirited Away even more, so I hope you enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.